Good morning, everybody. My name is Erica Jens. I'm the Assistant Director at the Southern Tier Library System. It's nice to have you all here with us today. We are having the third and final workshop in the Web Accessibility series with Sarah McFadden. Today, we'll be talking about web accessibility for social media and multimedia content. For today's workshop, we ask that you all abide by the Southern Tier Library System's Code of Conduct. I'll drop a link to that in the chat in a moment. Please note that the use of AI transcription tools and note-taking bots is prohibited for this session. Live captioning is available through Microsoft Teams if you'd like to use that. You can turn on the feature by clicking on More in the menu bar across the top of your screen and navigating to the language and speech settings. I'll also put a link in the chat on how to turn those captions on, and I'll include a link for Sarah's slides if you want to follow along as she's speaking. The workshop will be recorded. I've already hit record. A link to access the recording will be sent out to everybody who registered after the workshop. And if you would, please hold your questions until the end of the session or drop them into the chat and I'll start collecting them for Sarah to answer. And Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Erica. And thanks everyone for being here. I'm really excited. I've been excited about this all week. I'm gonna, do my usual, get my slides going here, get us warmed up, and I'm going to then turn off my camera so you're not staring at my forehead the whole time. I'm really excited for this session today. I'm excited because we've been together. This is our third workshop. It feels like a big accomplishment to me. But I'm also excited because I think some of the most substantial sort of changes, and I'll say also challenges, coming up with the quote unquote DOJ rule, I think they have to do with some slightly heavier lifts around video and audio content. So that's kind of the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today. I'm excited because I actually did a very similar training recently as an internal training here at the Office of Cultural Education. Because recently we've moved to using more video content to talk about collections and services, and we've been distributing that on social media. So it's kind of a perfect storm of accessibility considerations. This is a great time to talk about it. I will tell you that some feedback I got about this presentation is that the topic is daunting, and I don't disagree with that. However, my goal for us today is to really just get sort of our considerations laid out. So what are the things we need to be thinking of and planning? We're going to look at some tools, of course, because we always do. But the main thing is also like, I kind of want to just get us pumped up about this because you've probably heard me say it before, but all of this is a tremendous opportunity. Really good opportunity to get our messaging out there and to communicate the things that we want to communicate with the audiences who need them. So I just want to mention, you should be able to advance the slides independently if you want to do that, if that's helpful. Other than that, I'll be advancing them and probably being irresponsible with the laser pointer feature a little bit later on. So without further ado, here's our agenda today. Probably looks, again, familiar. We're just going to spend a little bit of time reviewing sort of the laws, rules, and guidelines that play into this. I didn't turn off my camera. Okay. That's a really brief kind of check-in. That is, review from previous sessions. We're going to spend the bulk of our time in the middle section here, which is the Plan It section. So components of accessible recordings. What does that really look like, and what are you actually creating to support that? And then, of course, it is like my sacred librarian duty to make sure that you have tools and resources to take with you, and actually have some fun surprises for you about that from the State Library. So just some goals for today. Like I said, just identifying considerations for planning and implementing multimedia content. The other part of that is discussing strategies for distributing that content so that it sort of remains accessible. One thing that is going to come up a lot is that we're using social media. Those platforms are not designed the way that we would probably design them, meaning they're not super accessible. So there's sort of additional strategizing that needs to be done to make sure that you're maintaining any accessibility work that you've done. Okay, so here's the first really brief section, just a review, the laws, rules, guidelines, and sort of threatening acronyms that come along with this work. Um, just a quick review. April 2026 is sort of the first pertinent date that the new quote-unquote DOJ rule takes effect. Just a reminder that that rule essentially takes the existing Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has to do with state and local government services, including libraries. It takes that and it says, in order for your website to be accessible, which it has always, that's always been a requirement, but the new piece of it is, to meet that requirement, your website must comply with a very specific level of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, and of course that is version 2.1 at level AA. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. I do just want to remind you of where you want to go for different information here. So for the actual sort of guidelines and technical specifications and other sort of resources, you want to be going to the Web Accessibility Guidelines. Okay, that is where the actionable information is. I do still recommend taking a look at the language of the ADA. You can go right to ada.gov. There is still some helpful language there, powerful language, and additionally some guidance for smaller government entities that are working to comply with the DOJ rule. So be sure to check all those out. And I have additional links at the end, so no worries there. Okay. Okay, oh, sorry, other piece of this is just a reminder that I am not a lawyer, but if I was, I would like to think that I would be Ann Kelsey from LA Law and that I would make this disappointed Ann Kelsey face at any non-accessible websites. I'm sorry for repeating that joke. So if you have a television attorney, your favorite television attorney that you want to share in the chat, please do. I would appreciate that. Okay, let's keep it moving. So we're just going to go through three components of inclusive recordings or inclusive multimedia content. And I have these lined up in a really specific way because in my view, these concepts all build on each other. This is also, in my opinion, kind of in order of the lightest lift to the heaviest lift. So we're going to start with video captions. Most people have encountered captions. Maybe that's when you're watching TV at home or when you're watching a training or YouTube, anything like that. We're going to talk through those. Text alternatives, this is also named in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is so I have a favorite thing in every accessibility presentation. Text alternatives is my favorite here, and I'm excited to tell you why in a little bit. And then the last piece that we're going to talk about is audio description, which, again, I have a fun surprise for that. And to me, it's very exciting and encouraging. It also, in my opinion, probably constitutes the biggest lift, the biggest sort of effort in terms of creating content a little differently than we're used to. That it's still a very doable lift, but it requires slightly more planning. So the other piece of this, even though we're kind of talking about these different components, the other piece that we're going to weave throughout is this sort of distribution strategy or this mindset that you are probably going to have to do additional work to make sure that your content is accessible on a social media platform. So there's a little kind of bonus resource here. It's this website called Accessible Social. I really recommend this. I keep it bookmarked because I look at it for examples quite a bit. But the person who maintains this website is very committed to educating other folks. So I just want to run through some of the really great features that you might find helpful on here. The first thing on here is accessibility by platform. So what's really great is this person monitors all social media platforms and kind of reports back on, do you have the ability to add alt text? Do you have the ability to edit captions? Things like that. So that when you have content that you're really excited to share with folks, you have an idea of what you need to do to keep it accessible. Also, we know that things like Facebook and Instagram, there are all kinds of sort of changes in features and interfaces and things like that. So anytime there's a change or update, you can get it from this site. There's also a very generously named section called Learning Moments. Learning Moments is actually a collection of it's examples of I guess corporate misdeeds is kind of an overstatement, but examples of really inaccessible social media content from major brands typically. That's a great resource as well. If you want to dig into any of these strategies or best practices, there are lots of resources for additional learning. And then this is great. There's a whole video lesson about accessible social media. And what I really like about this lesson is that it talks about things like captions and transcripts and things like that, but it's also a really good example of how to do that in like the final package. So accessible social, keep it handy, just a really great sort of resource for training, but also just great examples, and great for building awareness too. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about are video captions. And this is a really fun topic. I do a lot of captioning and I have a lot of thoughts about them. So first, I just want to take some time to sort out our terminology a little bit. So captions specifically are a text version of any speech and non-speech audio in your content. So let's say you have a video. So speech, obviously anything anybody's saying needs to be captioned, but then sounds also, even unintentional sounds. So an example of an intentional sound might be like audience applause or something like that. An unintentional sound might be, and I think we all experienced this during remote work and remote learning, like you might be giving a training or participating in a training and like there's a siren outside someone's window. So there's all kinds of things that will come up in audio, and generally speaking, captions communicate all of it. They're synchronized with the audio, and they're usually shown in a media player where they can kind of be turned on and off, right? So that's true of your TV, typically, and it's also true of a YouTube video that there's usually a button where you can turn captions on or off. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I also just want to say that interestingly, the terms captions and subtitles are used interchangeably, but they're technically two different things. Subtitles translate a spoken language, so if someone is speaking French, the subtitles would be in English. Um, it's not super important that everyone uses the terminology exactly, but I do think it's helpful to know the difference and to know what you're supposed to be sort of communicating. Interestingly, if you use the captions tool in YouTube Studio, it's called the subtitles tool, which really bothers me every time, but just something to be aware of. Again, captions are a complete textual representation of all the audio. And you are going to be adding in sort of some additional things to make sure that the captions remain sort of usable. So these are the elements of quality captioning. So the first and most important thing is that they're accurate, right? So if someone is, so let's say, one thing I do a lot is I caption some recorded webinars that we do here. If someone is sharing information, we want to make sure that everyone, no matter how they're interacting with that information, is getting an accurate version. So making sure that names, acronyms, all of that is being accurately represented. Also just being consistent with those names and acronyms and terminology, things like that. You always want them to be clear. One thing that comes up a lot with captioning is how much cleanup should you do for somebody's speech. For me, I know that I use a lot of filler words. I use a lot of ums. I've captioned my own recordings before, and it's really an experience. So there's always kind of some discussion about like, well, how much should you really be editing, and how faithful should the captioning really be? I usually come down on the side of, if there's an opportunity to edit out something that makes the caption sort of unclear and you're not losing any information, that generally seems to be okay. I will say I have captions on all the time when I'm watching TV. And in that case, if a word is missing from the captions, I usually notice it and I don't appreciate it. But making sure, to that end, that folks can read the captions, that there aren't too many words crammed on the screen, they're spaced out appropriately. And again, we're going for an equal experience here. So we're not we're not really concerned with making choices about what should be in the captions. We're concerned with making sure that the captions are representing everything that's going on in the recording. So the automated captions are what you see most often, actually, when you're using YouTube, with some exceptions. YouTube and Zoom and a couple other things, a couple other products, they do have automated captions. They are not very good. Um, there's always a lot of talk about, how helpful AI can be in situations like this. And I will say that like auto captioning technology has come a long way since I started doing this work a couple of years ago. Um, but automated captions, without exception, are just not, they're not that great. They don't have accurate punctuation, no capital letters, and no speaker tags. So every time someone different speaks in a video, you want to make sure that they are labeled. And an automated captioner can't really do that. Also, generally speaking, um, like with the auto captioning, there are a lot of factors, right? So depending on sort of the quality of the recording, and sort of the cadence of the presenter, um, you might get like some sort of questionable guesses from the automated captions. So the bottom line is that a human is really required to make edits to automated captions to ensure that they're readable and clear and frankly not total nonsense. Um, to that end, I have two examples here, two screen grabs, same scenes from a Harry Potter movie. Joanne's not getting any money for this. But on the left-hand side, there's a screen grab with automated captions. So there's two characters on screen. The automated captions say, "Mental, that one's good, Helena." On the right-hand side, the edited captions say, "Mental, that one, I'm telling ya." So pretty big difference there. I mean, you can kind of hear where the auto captions got that from, but one sort of provides meaning and one absolutely does not. So thanks, Joanne, for that example. So some considerations for when you're editing captions. And I just want to back up for 1 second and say, I want to talk about my process a little bit. I do start with automated captions. I upload a video to YouTube Studio. I let the auto captioner run. It's usually kind of an overnight situation, so plan for that. And then I spend quite a bit of time, going through and editing those captions. So what I'm doing is I'm adding or correcting punctuation. I'm double checking spelling, especially people's names, or, we're a field with a lot of acronyms, so double checking those, making sure speaker tags are present, and then making sure that the timing of the captions is helpful. So you've probably had an experience like I've had where you're watching television, maybe you're streaming something, you have the captions on and they sort of get off their timing, or um, maybe they're like the captions for a different episode than what you're watching. It's one of the most deeply unhelpful experiences you can have. Um, so these are the things that you want to make sure you're providing in a caption experience. Um, just a couple additional considerations here. So we talk a lot about closed captions, which you probably see more often outside of social media. So closed captions can be turned on and off by the user, which a lot of people appreciate. They're actually contained in a separate file, and it's just a text file, really. It's a very basic file that contains timestamps and then the text of the captions. And because it's a text file, it's searchable, which is really great. We're going to come back and talk about some search stuff in a little bit, but this is a fantastic way to just sort of, increase findability for some of your content as well. Open captions also have some benefits, okay? So open captions are always on. They're burned right into the video track, so they can't be turned off by a user. One of the advantages of that is you actually have more aesthetic control over how those captions look. You can make them bigger, you can move them around. Closed captions, it's like a black rectangle with white text on it. It's always going to look like that pretty much. We're going to come back to this on the next slide, but open captions can be preferable most often when closed captions aren't an option. So there's a couple scenarios we're going to look at, but if you don't have the option to upload a closed caption file, you're going to want to do it. You're going to want to do open captions. There's some sort of debate like which is better. They both serve different purposes. And it's really about, with everything, it's about sort of understanding the environment you're going to be in and what your users' needs are. So let's dig into that a little bit. Um, so one thing I want to say is my social media responsibilities at this point in time are limited to Instagram and Facebook. That's what we are using here at the State Library. So your mileage may vary a little bit depending on what you're using. But like I said, the platforms, unsurprisingly, they're not built with like accessibility first. So you may not, when you get there, have the option to add like an edited caption file. For example, I want to say it's Facebook. It allows you captions, but only their automated captions. You can't upload your own caption file. So you have some other approaches you can take. We talked on the previous slide about sort of burning in your own open captions before you send your video out into the world. That it works great on something like Instagram. The other thing is, consider leaning on YouTube a little bit more. I know that YouTube links don't play as nicely on Facebook as they used to, and I'm sure we're in for more of that. But YouTube is, it's a really big deal for a lot of reasons. It's great for hosting video. You can work with caption files. You can do a little bit of editing. It's a really sort of nice, lightweight way to take care of different video tasks if you're not, for example, set up with like a MacBook and a video studio at your place of employment. So there are other strategies. One thing that I always say all the time is you always want to start, anytime you're starting a project, in particular if you're starting something big like a video, start with accessibility. Think through all of the distribution. It's heartbreaking to put so much work into something and then kind of run into a dead end because the platform where you want to share it isn't on board yet with accessibility. So just protect your future selves and make sure you plan that out. Okay, we're going to move into text alternatives, which I'm super excited about. Text alternatives or transcripts are basically documents that include this sort of sequenced text and descriptions and any other information from a time-based, visual, or auditory information source. So time-based basically means a video. The goal is to provide someone with a way to achieve the same outcome of the time-based interaction in a non-time-based way. So let's get into our examples and things. I love text alternatives and transcripts because I love description and I love text files. Electronic text is really exciting because it's presentation neutral. It can be rendered in a number of different ways. So for a visual user, for someone who wants to hear it, for someone who's using a refreshable braille display, it can be rendered in a tactile manner or any combination. It is the most sort of flexible way of sharing information. And that's great. That's great news for us. Sharing text, we're really good at that. So information rendered in just an electronic text format can be presented in a number of ways, most importantly in the way that best meets the needs of the user. There are kind of two levels of transcripts or text alternatives. A basic transcript is essentially just your captions, really. It's the text version of the speech and non-speech audio information needed to understand the content. So let's say you had, a 5-minute video of someone introducing themselves. A basic transcript is totally sufficient for that. But let's say you're doing a training that has maybe some graphs or charts or illustrations, um, additional information that is helpful alongside the spoken content um, to communicate all the information that's needed. So a descriptive transcript is going to add in some additional components. So in addition to dialogue and of course any sounds, intentional or unintentional, if there are additional sort of setting or background details that are relevant. So maybe it's a video where you are introducing a new room in your library or a new service in your library. Other things that must be included in a descriptive transcript are things like actions and expressions of people, and then any on-screen text or graphics. So if you are, like I'm doing right now, if you're presenting a PowerPoint with, key points on the screen, that would need to be included in the text alternative / transcript as well. Essentially, the transcript is a standalone, like self-paced version of your video. So I just wanted to share this example. So actually, this is a really fun thing that I'm excited to share with you. So in the Novel New York databases, if you go into any of the Britannica resources, they in particular have pretty robust media libraries. So videos about all kinds of different topics from, like hard sciences to art to, sort of anything. It's exciting because all of their videos include transcripts. So if you're looking for really fantastic examples of how to do a text alternative for different kinds of videos, I super recommend checking out the Britannica databases for that reason. A lot of the time, for me, it's about seeing a good example in order to get started. And I do have some additional resources for you at the end that will help with that. Um, but I think this takes away some of the, for me anyway, it takes away some of the stress is just being able to see an example, see how someone else has implemented it. This is something I'm kind of experimenting with internally a little bit, but I wanted to share it. You absolutely can use an existing caption file to create a basic transcript and to even sort of leverage that into a more descriptive transcript as well. So I mentioned at the beginning that we're doing these in a specific order because they build in a really specific way, I think. So if you have, again, let's say it's a 5-minute video, um, you can use the caption file to create the sort of sequenced dialogue. But you're going to want to go back and add in any important visual information from the video as well. And again, if you're using slides, you would absolutely want to include that information. Yeah. In addition to that, you would want to add sort of speaker identification and things like that. Again, just to make sure that everyone has all the components that they need, all the audio components are represented in a textual way. Okay, this is the part that I am legitimately very excited to talk about. I mean, I'm excited to talk about the whole thing, but I kind of had like a realization about this earlier this week that I got excited about. So one thing that I say to my colleagues a lot, so much that they've started kind of repeating it back to me, is describing the service is the service. I did not make that up, okay? I read it somewhere else and it totally changed my thinking about maintaining websites. So describing the service is the service. Um, Lean into description. This is absolute gold for us, and it's also what we excel at doing. So let me lean into this, like describing the service thing a little bit more. On your website, so your website is sort of your, let's say it's your front door to the library. This is a great opportunity to describe as much as you can about the library. The other sort of piece of this is when you are sharing So I'm always very concerned about sort of what happens to website users when they are routed over to social media, something I think about a lot. Um, having having transcripts and text versions of content on your website is a great way to bring folks back to your website. So it's absolutely a great idea to share videos and other recordings on social media. But I think there's kind of a larger like ecosystem at play here where you're also always kind of bringing them back to the library. And leaning into description is a great way to do this. Um, we talked about closed caption files being searchable, a transcript or a text alternative. So basically just a page on your website that is all of the information from a video. Um, that is very, very searchable, and it's going to boost your search engine optimization or your SEO, which that's not the main goal. The main goal is for folks to find you and to connect with your services. But, you know, essentially describing that in text is an amazing way to bring everybody in. So there are a couple ways that that text alternatives slash transcripts are like immediately applicable to social media. Okay. So one thing that we all do on social media a lot is we make graphics, right? Like a flyer or just kind of a little like rectangular graphic to advertise maybe a program or a service, something like that. So an image of text on its own is not accessible at all, right? It needs something we talked about last time. It needs alternative text, right? Instagram does not necessarily let you add that. So what we have decided to do at the state library and what a lot of other places do is we actually just add an image description hashtag and we put that alt text right in the main body of the post. Um, it feels weird at first to do that. I'll be really honest. I feel very self-conscious sometimes because I feel like all the librarians looking at the post are checking my work, and that's fair. Um, but this is what we do, right? So just to give you an example, we talk a lot about collections that we have here at the library. We have amazing, super surprising items here. And we've been working really hard lately to share those out in digital spaces. Um, and then when I am writing those image descriptions, that feels really appropriate for collections work. And it's also just it's an additional opportunity to kind of work in the value of the library and the value of what we're doing. So I just think that the description piece is a great opportunity for us. Um, we've all been in the library space. We've all heard from each other that it would be great if people knew more about our services and about what we do. Here's a great opportunity. The other thing I wanted to mention here are infographics. I get a lot of questions about infographics. This is this is my like bad definition of an infographic, but this is something that is like a data visualization, right? It's usually a good way to kind of show a data set in kind of a quick, more user-friendly, more maybe social media friendly way. If you're creating infographics in something like Canva, we're all friends with Canva here, you might notice that there are not a lot of accessibility sort of interventions available. Add to that the fact that like, you know, an image is essentially a flat file. It doesn't contain tags or anything like a web page or a PDF. So it's going to require sort of separate description. And I was doing some research about this recently, and actually what's recommended for infographics is a transcript. Um, so this is something I don't have a lot of practice doing it, something I want to try out and maybe kind of figure out a system for. But I think that's also a great opportunity. I mean, we kind of think of infographics as standing in for a text version of something as being maybe a little more exciting than a text version. Um, but in my view, they always go together. Um, back to back to transcripts for a second, and then I'm going to circle us back even further. Um, everyone kind of learns and leverages information in a different way, and one of our goals with accessibility is always making sure that people have a choice about how they're interacting with that information. Some people do really well with videos. Some people would rather have something written that they can go through on their own time. Um, to bring us back even more, actually, we'll just go to captions for a second here. Captions have a lot of uses beyond accessibility. People who are language learners can use captions. It's very helpful for them. Folks who maybe want to watch a video but kind of can't because of the space they're in. Maybe they're on public transportation. Maybe they're in your library. I can tell you, I was a nighttime reference librarian at a community college for a long time. You want to give people a lot of opportunities not to play their phone at full volume in the middle of the library. So I just like to mention those because it really is about sort of flexibility and choice. And I think that that is a much more helpful mindset than just thinking about it in terms of compliance. Okay, we're going to move in to audio description. So I talked this up a little bit as being the biggest lift, but again, I think this is a place for a lot of opportunity that aligns really well with the way that we are already doing things in libraries. You can let me know if you disagree, by the way. Like, I'm not the end-all authority on this. I'm just super excited about the possibilities. So audio description provides information about visual information, so actions, characters, scene changes, any on-screen text or other visual content. It provides an audio version of that. The components of audio description, you're going to probably see some repeated themes here. Names of all speakers, or identifying all speakers. Identifying when people come onto the screen and when they leave. Facial expressions. Some of this is going to depend on the kind of content that you have. Like there was another slide that said you need to describe the facial expressions of animals. I don't know. I mean, if you all are making content with live animals, I definitely want to hear about it because I'm jealous, but not all of these are going to apply all the time, is what I mean to say. Any action or movement, scene or setting details, and then of course, our old friends, charts, diagrams, screenshots, and other images. That always needs to be described. So, adding audio description, I think can be a little challenging. Again, if your video editing setup is as basic as mine, you don't have sort of a full suite of tools for this. So there's some ways you can tackle this though. So audio description can be part of your original audio track. It can be written into your script. A good example of adding audio description to something like this, by the way, or a webinar, workshop, you know, something with slides. This is something I'm trying to get better at all the time, and it's something that we all kind of trained ourselves away from for a while. But part of audio description is making sure you're reading and describing everything that's on your slides when you're doing a webinar. You can also add audio description after the fact as a separate track that users can toggle on and off. And just to take you back to Britannica for a second, so there's a screenshot here on this slide of a video from Britannica High School, and there's the video transcript underneath. But there's also in the bottom corner of the video right next to kind of the other controls, there's a little button that says AD, and that's actually the audio description button. The fact that there's a button here means that audio description for this video can be toggled on and off by the user. I don't have any experience adding additional audio tracks to a video. It's not something I'm set up to do right now. So my practice right now is largely geared toward getting better at describing things essentially anytime I'm speaking and being recorded. It's not easy, it requires a lot of practice. I ask for a lot of feedback from my colleagues and we all try to practice this. It can feel weird, but once you start doing it, it's actually kind of addictive, I think. Okay, I have a fun example for you of audio description. It's very quick. It was a hit the last time I shared it. It is a little bit, I think, probably beyond what most of us are going to be describing. Again, unless you have like a full animation studio that I don't know about. Um, but I think this clip is just a good example of a few things. One is how you fit audio description in with existing sounds that are going on in the video. But also, I love this because I think it supports the idea that this is an additional avenue for expressing something important. So you'll see in this video, the audio description, it fits with the tone of the scene. It's very funny. And I just think I think it's great the way that they kind of like use the audio description to to make sure that everyone is experiencing kind of like the whimsy in the clip. So I'm gonna start playing it. If you can't hear it, please just like drop a note in the chat, but it should be set up so that you can hear it. All right, I'm going to play it. Okay. So one, I hope you just enjoyed that because it's cute and funny. But I think it's a great example of just the ways that we can work with what we have to make it more accessible. So again, you most likely will not be tasked with describing like a fight between a snowman and a reindeer. Maybe you will be that lucky, I'm not sure. Um, so I like that example because actually that seemed like a pretty challenging one. But the description it was accurate, it didn't take away from any of the other sounds, and it provided a fun and inclusive way to experience kind of the joy that that's trying to communicate. Okay, so again, getting back to this idea of getting in the habit of doing live audio description when you are doing a webinar or something else. I use webinar for my example because that's typically what I'm dealing with. But this could be, you know, any video content that you're making. Um, So again, when you have multiple presenters, make sure speakers are consistently introducing themselves. So if you have a panel and people are taking turns responding to something, make sure they're always introducing themselves. Again, make sure you're reading out text on the slide. Uh, we all have like these really highly adapted responses to our life with Microsoft tools. And, you know, PowerPoint has not has not been immune from that discussion. So there's a lot of discussion like, you know, how much text should be on your slide? How much should you be reading? But if you are aiming for an equal inclusive experience, you just want to make sure you're always communicating what is on your slides. And that includes, of course, charts, diagrams, screenshots, and other images being fully described. Of course, you don't need to describe things like horizontal lines or, you know, like if your logo appears on every slide. But if you have a pie chart that says, you know, the majority of users are interested in XYZ program, just make sure you're describing that. And there are a lot of resources online, and including one I'm going to share with you in a little bit, that can help you sort of get started with describing, data and sort of more challenging things to describe. So for sharing out accessible recordings, I have a couple ideas for this. So if you are recording something that you want to share out with an audience or you want to post on your website, um, the DOJ rule does specify, WCAG 2.1 level AA, and that does require audio description. So these are some sort of immediate interventions that I think will be helpful for creating more accessible recorded webinars. One idea is to work from a script. So I mentioned that I've captioned my own presentations a number of times, and I've learned a lot about my speaking style. I can tell you that editing captions is very time consuming. It is 100% worth it, but it's also really important to know what that time commitment is. Webinars, they're frequently, they're live events, things happen, software is weird, dogs are barking, microphones aren't working. One thing you can do to kind of streamline the caption editing process is to work from a script. I always write a script and then I stop looking at it immediately, and that's how we end up with all these sort of weird like sidebar things, which can make captioning a little difficult. The other thing is to consider like pre-recording when that's appropriate. A live webinar is always going to be a little bit of a roll of the dice in terms of what you're getting. If you pre-record, you can make sure that your audio is like as a good quality. You can work from a script, and you just sort of, you're not contending with that kind of live aspect where you have like one chance to get it right. A couple other strategies, obviously providing your slides in advance, or if you have a transcript, things like that. We like to share the slides in advance so that folks have the option of just participate, again, having the option of absorbing the information in a non-time-based way in a format that best suits them. The other thing is, most webinars are about an hour. Consider smaller, shorter videos. They take a lot, it's a lot less to get it ready to go. I can tell you, captioning an hour's worth of video, it takes me an hour of real time to do 10 minutes of video time. So consider shorter chunks, especially when you're getting started. Okay, you knew that I would not show up here in front of you today without bringing Tiny Shia. So Tiny Shia returns for the final time to tell you about additional learning and support. Okay? W3.org should always be your first stop for web accessibility trainings and quick reviews and guidelines. Bookmark it. I also shared the CUNY Accessibility Toolkit for Open Educational Resources. That is a very fully featured LibGuide from CUNY, all about ensuring accessibility for a really wide variety of educational formats, including video. My favorite resource on here is the Described and Captioned Media Program Caption Key. So I talked before about the importance of having examples to look at. This is a great place to find examples. We had a Reading Rainbow program a year or so ago, and part of that program started with them playing the old Reading Rainbow theme song, which great day for me, but I had to learn how to caption a song. I did not know how to do that. So the Described and Captioned Media Program Caption Key was a huge help. They also have a description key. So if you're getting into audio description, you can get some help with different scenarios and how to describe them. YouTube and Microsoft Stream both have some pretty basic but still pretty helpful editing capabilities, and they both allow you to create caption files and edit them, which is awesome. These are not like endorsements of these. This is just recognizing what's available. I also just wanted to let you know about our blog, New York State Library blog, right on our homepage. We are now publishing monthly accessibility tips, web accessibility tips. So we have information about alternative text, about document structure, color contrast, and we're working on new topics all the time. Also, the New York State Library blog has things other than accessibility, great updates about our collections and services and things like that. We do a lot of really fun stuff here, so please check that out. And then next month, I will be doing a webinar here at the State Library. Web accessibility, 3 things you can do right now. My goal is to make it a super fresh offering. There might be some overlap from what we've discussed in this series, but I really hope that you'll join us. And I just hope generally too that that you'll continue to show up to these events and these spaces, and that you share what you learn with each other and that we support each other. That's my wish. So, like I said, with multimedia in particular, you need to plan for the time it takes to make this accessible. You are always going to save time by starting with accessibility as your main planning factor instead of adding it after the fact. It can't be added after the fact. All of this work is work for our future selves. So congratulations on showing up for that. And then I kind of wanted to, I don't know, I thought this would be like a real zinger, but I did not get a good response the last time I did it. So this is a little piece of clip art. This is the Acropolis in Athens from the 5th century BC. One thing that I've learned about this incredibly busy and incredibly ancient tourist site is that it is mostly accessible. So I think if they can make the Acropolis of Athens accessible, I feel encouraged that we can make our websites accessible as well. So you can leave me feedback about that little zinger. Again, I think it falls a little bit flat. You can let me know if I should replace it with Tiny Shia. That is everything. I am excited to take your questions.
Thanks, Sarah. We have a couple questions in the chat. I'll start there as folks are warming up to ask their own. Somebody asked, is the blog something we can subscribe to so that we get it monthly in our email?
Oh my gosh, thank you for that question. Absolutely. I'll drop a link for you. Please do. We love our blog. Actually, sorry, lost all my windows here. Doesn't really take much. I'll get that in there. I'll drop that in there. But yes, you can, everything populates automatically on our homepage. So every time there's a new post, you'll see them there, but you can absolutely subscribe and we would love to have you. Thank you for that question.
We had a comment from Lisa. I know on Instagram and TikTok, you can edit the automated captions after they're created, but it is a finicky process.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm not familiar with what that process looks like. I'd love to hear more sometime. But yeah, I mean, anytime you can save yourself frustration with this, I think is worth investigating.
Then a question from Mike. This came early in the presentation. And Mike, if you're still on and you want to turn on your microphone, you mentioned an exception to something, and Mike asked what the exception is and is looking for clarification.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I was just curious about, pretty much we're talking about tools. I guess there's 2 questions now. Let me just, I guess, ask that the second question was when you were talking about closed captioning tools and stuff like that, you said there were some exceptions to it, and then you kind of went into it depends on the scenario, how good the audio is, if there's background noises, but if push comes to shove and you need a basis for some captioning, have you dealt with any good captioning tools?
I can't say I've dealt with any good ones. I can tell you, so in all fairness to YouTube, whatever sort of fairness they deserve from us, their automated captions have come a super, super long way. I have not been doing captioning, well, I guess I've been doing it for like 6 years, which is a pretty long time. The quality of the captions has improved significantly, but I also attribute that to all of us being online for so long, a couple years ago. I think generally like online meeting and microphone quality has improved as well. We've just run into a lot of scenarios over the years where our live recording, just something is wrong. It's picking up somebody's page flips or something like that, or someone's microphone is not quite right. There's a lot of things that can sort of contribute to the automated captions being better or worse. YouTube is the best I've seen so far, and we do use that as the basis for our finalized edited captions. So again, it's not really a recommendation or a sort of like endorsement, but that's the best I've seen so far. Stream is
So,
not bad either.
what about like third party? Like, I meant like third party tools that you can use on your phone or something like that. For like I guess question one was at the beginning of this seminar, it was mentioned not to use these audio transcribers and stuff like that. Was that a legal issue, copyright issue? Was that just the inaccuracy? What was the reasoning for? Because you're not the first one that does it, and I know that certain companies do it for the copyright issues, but I wasn't sure. Being that this is kind of based on it, you could say, "Hey, anybody here that has the AI transcriber on, look at it right now and see how the accuracy is, just for curiosity purposes."
Yeah, I have not used any third-party AI tools to do this. So I can't speak to that at all. But I mean I'm just gonna underscore like I would never ever I don't think there's any product that can eliminate the need for a human to spend a long time looking at captions.
Yeah, I mean, note taking too. I had a friend that asked me, and I could not answer them. I mean, there's stuff out there like they go to a lot of meetings and they want to at least get a general brush of what was said during the meetings, which does rehash, memories. And I guess I'm not in the field of being a marketing person. That she works for like one of those uh, big, I guess, television companies. I can't think of it. That they said a lot of people use stuff like that, and I'm sure the accuracy is not great, but I was just curious if you've ever dealt with anything that you use in regards to doing any kind of dictation, any kind of conversions or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't have that experience yet. I mean, if anyone else wants to share, I'm totally open to that. But it's not part of my workflow right now, so
Mhm.
yeah, I can't speak to it. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that all this technology makes this work not easier, but more accessible for everyone. So
Mhm.
I think there's opportunity for sure, but I can't speak to it yet.
Oh, great. No, well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your question. I appreciate that.
Any other questions out there? Here we go. Amanda has a question. How granular should we try to be with our captioning without overcomplicating things?
Oh, great question. Yeah, yes, is there a baseline you can follow? Yes. Okay, so this is a great opportunity to check out the captioning key. The link is right in the slides. I can probably grab it too and put it in the chat, but um, that is your baseline. So it has good, again, it's two things. It's examples of how a caption should look in different sort of situations. It will also explain to you why you're doing it that way or like some best practices to approach different scenarios. You should be like the baseline is to be as faithful as possible to the original sort of spoken content. Um, if you have an opportunity to, like, if a word is spoken by mistake that like really makes the captions not make sense and you can get rid of it, I feel that's appropriate. But there's plenty of discussion in the captioning key and also on that accessible social resource, kind of about balancing those different needs. I also think it's something that you'll kind of recognize when you see it, which I know is like the worst answer. Um, but a lot of this really is just kind of like building up the muscle of doing it and getting comfortable with it.
All right, Sarah. Well, hearing no other questions, but seeing a few thanks for you, I think we can wrap up for today and the series. Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been really informative and helpful. It feels like a big, scary topic, but hearing from you makes it feel achievable.
Well, thank you so much. This was great. You're all accomplices in accessibility now, which is really exciting. So carry that out into the world. I appreciate the opportunity to spend this time with you and to talk accessibility. So thank you so much, Erica, for having me.
Sure thing, Sarah. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.